Buongiorno, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube. Your resident Ned's photo set your service. Ready to give you some more philosophical insight. It's just common sense thinking and critical thinking. In my conversations with fundamentalist believers in religion, Christians to be exact, it was displayed to me that critical thinking breaks down when you have to have faith. Okay, well, given the fact that is, they can't be more correct. But this is why it's correct. If you believe in something that is fantastical, how is science going to debunk that other than just recognizing that it's ridiculous? If a child or anybody believed in the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, when they believe in that stuff, you can't use logic and science to debunk that. It's unfalsifiable. It's impossible to prove incorrect because it's not there. There's no way to prove that it doesn't exist at all. Yet they still believe, and you can't debunk that with science. If something is not there, there's no way to. If there's something that you can't see, can't experience in a way that can in other ways be explained any other way, and even a lot of times not even that certain way, you just don't know yet. It is irresponsible to build a belief system around such notions. How in the world can I test and show that the Easter Bunny doesn't exist? Well, to a child, they grow up and you tell them, we've been putting the Easter candy out to hide. We've been hiding the eggs. The reason why a child will start to not believe in the Easter Bunny anymore, because they realize that what the reason for the Easter Bunny even existing was for. Because they realize that it was a made-up story, and they show how it happened. They revealed they showed you behind the curtain, and it showed that a person was creating a puppet show, much like the Wizard of Oz. However, with God, that's really not possible to debunk, except the way that I can show that it's man who's been using God as a puppet. They have basically, people worship a puppet God. Even if God is up there, let's say he is up there, then but he doesn't exist. If he does exist, he doesn't exist in a way in which that we can interact with him to know for sure if he's creating miracles, doing things. There would be evidence left over, even in our own realm. Because that's the only way that we can worship God. Otherwise, Otherwise, God would just, he would come down and he would show himself and he would do things, and it would be obvious without having to believe. Having to believe something proves that there's information that we don't. Oh, there's lots of information we don't know about. Otherwise, we wouldn't have to believe anymore. We would just know. And I deal with lots of people that are convinced that they know God exists because of the things that they've convinced themselves that the earth and everything in reality is proof God exists. Or at least proof that he exists, that the Bible, the holy book, is what we should go by. And that's somehow proof that this physical book that was written down by man is in fact the Word of God. That they're using something that they can't prove to substantiate something that is physical, that is physically there. But anything that's physically there, if you read through the Bible, there's plenty of things that Christians practice and things that they do that's not on point with the Bible. Lots of Christians don't know their own Word of God, and they're hypocritical even within their own belief system. So yeah, I mean, if you continue to believe, and if logic can't substantiate what you believe, then of course logic will break down, because then you can just make up anything to stay ahead of the logic. Anything can be made up because you can't ultimately prove what needs to be proved. That's why religion has been so. That's the reason why religion still has a hold today, because we're still flawed as human beings. We don't have the gift of foresight, or we can't predict the future without witnessing previous events or other evidence, but we can't look through a portal in time to see what's going to happen. The only way we know, it's just like we can only predict things in a way that a weather forecaster can. You take what's happened before and you base it on those patterns. So only logic can prove logic. Testing and study, that is what science is. So if God does exist, if he does in fact exist, why would it be terrible to use science to debunk what is actually wrong? Even if God created the universe, he would want us to know what actually is. If God does in fact exist, then everything that they say, that people who believe say is true, should follow in file, and you could substantiate it. But if you just have belief and not truth, then you have information that you have information that can't be proven. You have information that is so ridiculous then that fantasy world has its own rules. Logic doesn't exist within belief because it doesn't follow logic. That's why if you cling on to it, you know, then of course it breaks down. Because I mean, if you watch a movie and you're watching, watching Superman, or you're watching a cartoon, well, you can't you can't explain it away logically. If you explain it away logically, then it wouldn't exist. It would, if that was the whole point, was explain it logically, there'd be no show. There would be no fantasy. If your aim is to have a fantasy, you don't put logic in there, because logic is its own beast, and fantasy is its own beast. The only difference that you need to have is you need to identify what is fantasy, and you have to identify what is reality. And people who think fantasy is reality, that's dangerous. But most of the people that I talk to, this fantasy that they live by, it's not ultimately hurting anybody. Not yet. Well, it has hurt me a little bit, because one guy that has talked to me, he's pretty much told me things that he's pretty much running things down the way that any fundamentalist Christian would, and he's offending me, and he's making me feel bad about myself. And I saw him as a friend. I do still see him as a friend. But he was pretty much acting like the way that, what Christians have done to drive me away. They're breaking down. They are destroying the fantasy. So their own reveal is destroying the fantasy for me. So yeah, it's ridiculous. So, but anyway, have a good day. I will talk to you later.